The stream is
Okay.
live.
Hey, we are live. There we are.
Well, welcome to the Van Life Summit. We are pleased to be here. I am Cherie,
I'm Chris.
and we are the founders of the Mobile Internet Resource Center. Today, we'll be talking about mobile internet for van life.
Now, we have been full-time traveling technomads since 2006. We've been doing this for a very long time. We divide our time up now by between a van, a boat, and a vintage bus. So we've got a lot of experience in a lot of different ways of traveling, but we've got no house and no car. So we're real full-time nomads.
So, we're currently aboard our boat in Central Florida. Our vintage bus is currently living out in Arizona. And then we use the van to get around, and it is our local transportation. So we spend probably anywhere from 4 to 7 months out of the year traveling in our van. But we have traveled also by travel trailers and other types of RVs, and have done travels by train and cruise ships. And as you can see on the screen, we are owned by our cat Kiki. She is the admiral of our nomadic fleet.
And she is basically the reason we need to focus so much on mobile internet, because she is obsessed with watching cat videos on YouTube. So we have to get her a lot of bandwidth to stream everything, and then we can get enough video and bandwidth to work ourselves too when she's satisfied.
So this all started. So when in 2006, Chris hit the road solo. We met online, fell in love, classic love story, boy meets girl on Prius forum.
Yeah.
And I joined him on the road. At the time, I was working as a software developer, remotely running my own business. I had to have internet to continue to run my business. Chris had a background in mobile technology.
But I've been doing mobile internet since I first moved to Silicon Valley in 1996, and I had some of the very earliest mobile internet gear. I cut the cord and was actually living fully off of mobile internet way back then, before there was even a thing called Wi-Fi. I was playing around with mobile internet, worked for mobile companies, and when I hit the road, I just wanted to be a technomad and didn't want to live any place anymore, and set out and didn't expect to run into somebody who wanted to sell her house and move in with my tiny trailer.
So obviously we were a match from the beginning, and we started a little blog called Technomadia, where we just shared our lives. Social media was not really a thing back then. There were not influencers. It wasn't a thing. We just shared, and we started a YouTube channel under Technomadia as well in 2009. I think we're credited with being the second oldest YouTube channel about RV life. And we just did that all for fun. I was still running my software business. We started doing app development. We did some consulting with the Escapees Club to help them launch the Escapers group. We helped launch our village. So we did some really fun things professionally. But this one question kept coming up all of the time: is
how do you get internet to work? How are you doing this?
So we had someone suggest back then that we start something and make that a business. And so we started the Mobile Internet Resource Center a decade ago. We have been doing this since 2014, running the Mobile Internet Resource Center, where we are focused on tracking and educating on mobile internet options for RVers and boaters. So nomads, basically.
Yeah, and it's just grown and grown and grown. It was just us as a side project, and now eventually we shut down all of our other businesses, and now this is what we do. And we've actually got a full-time a team of 8 people who all contribute towards the site, and they're all nomads of various sorts who contribute their expertise.
So back then, when we started this, there were very few options for getting online. It was pretty simple to track all of this. There wasn't that much that we had to, it was a lot of work, but it was like 2 mobile hotspot devices, 1 booster, a couple of data plans, and a couple of Wi-Fi repeating gear, and HughesNet for satellite. That was it. That's all we had to track. These days, there are hundreds of options out there, and it takes a lot to keep on top of it all. And if you go into any RVing group and people ask, well, what do you get to get online? You're going to hear one of 2 solutions, and that's usually going to be Starlink or T-Mobile Home Internet. That's the answer today. But what we're going to be showing you today is that while those are great options, they're only part of the solution.
Yes. It's both much better than it ever was, and a lot easier than it ever was.
So first of all, let's overview what the 3 ways are to get online. The first is, of course, satellite and the prominent option being Starlink. It has been out for a few years now. Great option. You can get the equipment for as little as $5.99 for a flat panel dish that you can either set up on a tripod or on the ground, or even
Mount on your roof.
mount on your
Yes, yeah.
roof. Service plans start from $120 to $150 a month if you're staying on land. If you're doing overlanding or international
stuff.
travels, there are global plans as well out there. But it is a great option. But it comes, I mean, it's great if you have clear, wide open sky. If you like to park under trees, I happen to like trees.
Shade is a good thing.
There is a consideration there because it does need wide open skies. Really bad weather can affect it, and it uses a lot of power, and it's a kind of a larger equipment to have to store in a van. So there are some considerations.
Particularly for vans with relatively small electrical systems, Starlink can be cumbersome. And if you're trying to do any sort of a stealth camping where you want to not have to go out and deploy something, unless you've got the Starlink mounted on your roof, which only the most expensive $2,500 model is designed officially for permanent mounting outside on a roof of a vehicle, then you got gear to set up. So there's also some trade-offs there if you're trying to be stealthy on a street side or something.
So the other option that has been kind of the default for like as long as we've been on the road is cellular. So these are depending upon the same service plans that go along with your smartphone. But you get them on devices like mobile hotspot devices. These are like phones without the phone part. So they just create the mobile hotspot device. And then there are higher end cellular embedded routers. So there's a cellular modem or two inside of these devices. And then they can be more robust, combining them, the connections that you have. They can even bring in options like Starlink and the T-Mobile Home Internet that are external sources into these Ethernet ports. So this is getting into more advanced setups for those that need a reliable connection with multiple purpose redundancy.
That's when you really start to embrace redundancy and having multiple connections going at once. It gets to be much more powerful, more complicated, but really, really increases your reliability online.
And then, of course, you have to find the data plans that go along with the types
Cellular
of equipment
plans and stuff.
Which we have resources for all of this. We'll be going over this in a little bit. And you also need a signal enhancing solution. So external antennas.
Cell boosters. We get asked a lot about
cellular boosters, which actually do play a role in van life. We'll get into that towards the end of this presentation. So these are all ways to get a better signal when your signal is weak and better performance. And then the other option that a lot of people hope that they can rely on is using free Wi-Fi hotspots in their travels, whether you're
campgrounds or coffee shops. And
so a lot of campgrounds say free Wi-Fi. And you get there, you connect to their network, and it's bogged down. Everyone's streaming Netflix and Hulu or doing FaceTime calls with friends.
Stream Netflix
and they're not, because everyone's there sitting frustrated in their RVs, not able to do anything on the free provided Wi-Fi because they're basically bringing in a small garden hose of internet and trying to spread it across the entire campground. So there are some campgrounds that are doing really well with it, and they advertise as such, and they're getting better with it because they're knowing that today's RVers want a great internet connection.
But on the other hand, putting in good Wi-Fi is very expensive. And even if a place that you're going has it, the next place you're going very likely does not. And particularly van lifers like to go to a lot of more exotic places. And so Wi-Fi tends to be something that you really can't rely on all the time.
Right. Now, the advantage that a van has is they're small, and we can pull into the parking lot of a public library, a coffee house, a McDonald's, a Walmart, which do maybe have free Wi-Fi hotspots that you might be able to get from your van if you have an antenna on your roof, or you're parked in such a way that the metal of your van is not blocking the signal. We'll get into that in just a little bit. So there are options for using Wi-Fi in your travels, but if you need a reliable setup that works wherever you are, you're most likely going to be depending on some combination of Starlink and cellular, and maybe multiple cellular carriers. Now, I mentioned we spend part of our year on the road in our van, and we just came off a 5-month cross-country van trip.
Yeah, and so we carry all the different carriers. We'll talk about them in a second, but we had basically every option with us on this trip, and we paid attention to what was working for us, whether it was T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, Starlink, Dish Network even. We paid attention on the entire trip, kind of a sampling of the country. Now, everybody's trips and travels will be different, but this particular trip, we did 8,200 miles and 47 different stops, ranging from deep boonies to urban to driveway camping to boondocking to national parks to state parks, all sorts of different types of places. And we took notes about what worked.
Yep. We like to mix it up. So we did a recording at each location at work. Now, what we were carrying with us, this is our personal mobile internet setup.
In our van, yeah.
In our van, and was also is on our boat most of the time. But you go to technomatty.com/internet and learn more about each of these individual components if you really want to go dive deep. But just an overview, at the center of our setup is the Peplink Max BR2 Pro router. This has 2 cellular modems inside of it. So 2 of our cellular plans are right in there and they can be combined. Then we have 2 external antennas, that one is on a pole on our van and the other is always flat mounted on the van, and those go into the antennas, the modems inside the router.
Right.
We have a variety of mobile hotspot devices. You can see over there in the corner that
Yes.
we have other plans on that only work on those hotspot devices that we can bring in either via USB or Ethernet
into the router as well.
as extra sources. We carry Starlink that comes in through one of the Ethernet ports so that we can use that as part of our setup. And then towards the end of the trip, InstiConnect, which is a great option, has the modem and the antenna built into one black box that you then can put on a pole or on the roof. They, in December, just came out with an option that can also go into an Ethernet port on any router. So we just tried that out towards the end of the trip.
Our gear is basically the definition of overkill, because
Way overkill.
This is our job. We test everything so that we can help other people understand. So we have kind of the over the top, but we also know quite a few other people who connectivity is work for them and is very important, who have the similar levels of gear just because they want the extra reliability. But sometimes we can actually bond together 11 different simultaneous connections via that Peplink router that we have.
But I want to say, he says overkill. What that means is you don't need to go buy this if you need a reliable connection.
No, you can do much better or
Well,
much cheaper.
You can do it much cheaper. I'm just saying we have a lot of options. We test a lot of options because, well, we have to. Now, the data plans that we carried with, we have a grandfathered in unlimited Verizon plan. I'm not going to tease you about that. You can't get
have
it
anymore. Sorry.
There is not an equivalent on the market at present time. With T-Mobile, we have their business unlimited plan, which is very similar to their T-Mobile home internet plan that you hear so much about. That plan is $60 per month today. It's unlimited data. It's always deprioritized, but if T-Mobile's not usually very congested. What we like about the business option, and anyone with a social security number can qualify as a business with T-Mobile, little hint right there. Same price, same unlimited plan, but you can take the SIM card and use it in your own device.
Right.
Whereas with T-Mobile home internet, you're stuck with whatever gateway they give you at the store.
They give you, the kind of a garbage can looking gateway from the store that does, a lot of them don't support external antennas. So they're very poorly suited for use inside a van because you got metal walls around you and you got this indoor router.
And they're big.
And they're big and it's clunky and it doesn't really work well on DC. So having the T-Mobile business unlimited plan, not the small business unlimited plan, the business unlimited plan, which is still easy to get, that SIM card will work in all sorts of different devices and routers, and you got a lot more flexibility. Great for van life.
And then I mentioned that we have some plans that only work in the hotspot devices, and that's one by Calyx Institute. That's a nonprofit plan. You pay for a year of membership, and then you can use it. It's unlimited data, and it comes out to be about $40 a month. So we still keep that one in our arsenal. On AT&T, we also went with their business unlimited plan. Their unlimited plans are priced under, they're somewhere between $50 and $100 a month. And the price difference is how much speed you get. We keep one that gives us a maximum of 50 megabit per second. That is plenty to do most of what we need to do online. And we keep that, I think it's $65 a month. That's what we keep. And then you can use that SIM card in any device.
And unlimited data.
And then we have a legacy unlimited plan from back in the day that's only 4G. Again, a plan you can't get today. And then we do keep Starlink. We currently have it on the standard plan, which is the residential, for $120 a month. And we just update our address when we get to a new location.
Saves $30 a month over the Starlink mobile plan. And all you have to do is go through that extra hoop of manually updating your address. But you save $30. So
Yep.
hey, it's great.
Yeah. But the mobile plan, if you don't want to update your address or you want to go into Canada or Mexico, that one is $150 per month.
Right.
And it's lower standard.
And now these plans change all the time. So check the link there before we change size. The rvmobileinternet.com/plan picks is where we keep updated what plans you can actually get today and how well suited they are for mobile life.
There's a whole bunch of other plans out there. We track them
Yes.
for tablets. We track them for mobile hotspot devices, routers, and smartphones. So you can get all of our current topics there. And we put out a video once or twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year sometimes, on our YouTube channel for the Mobile Internet Resource Center.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about this 47 stop trip. Now we recorded, I had a little notebook out. We just recorded what worked at each location. Now, if we got to our location And what we worked last time just worked at this new location. We didn't go and fiddle. This was a quick trip. It was a lot of stops
A lot
for
of one
5
night and
months.
2 night stops.
We were not out there like speed testing and testing every option at every location. We actually do have a life. We try to get out biking, exploring, hiking, exploring hot springs, visiting with friends. So we didn't sit there just testing internet all the time. Because that's what we all want, right? We don't want to be doing that every stop.
The ultimate win is when you don't have to think about internet and it just worked. And out of those 47, 14 times it didn't have to make any fiddles at all. It just worked. Exactly.
The last connection that we used at our last stop just worked at our next. Now, the bad news was out of 47 stops, with all that gear and all the redundancy and plans that we have,
even with
Starlink, we had 4 locations on our trip where we could not get what we called a reliable enough connection to do something like what we're doing here, a broadcast or a video conferencing call. And 2 of those times, we actually had calls planned. In fact, it was the last Van Life Summit back in September. True. We had to move locations before the start of the summit so that we could do the broadcast because where we were was not going to work.
Not reliable enough, even with Starlink.
So we had 2 locations where we had to either cancel or move locations to do what we need to do. So even the message here is not go buy everything. You're going to have connection everywhere. It's even if you go buy everything, don't expect to get connection everywhere.
Allow yourself some time to test and a backup plan of, even if that involves maybe moving to another location, driving to the top of a hill, getting out from under trees, doing whatever, always have your backup plan in mind, because there is no universal I'm connected everywhere in North America option you can get short of Air Force One. It's that works absolutely everywhere.
So go in prepared to do some research as to what you can expect at each location when you move there. Cite a lot of RV campground review sites and BLM review sites. People are leaving this information in their reviews. They'll say, Verizon worked great here. I could work remotely. Look at those reviews. Get an idea of what you can expect. Yep. All right. Starlink.
We also know how often Starlink works.
We hear this all the time. We see it. Someone asks in an RVing group, what internet should I get? Starlink.
And actually, you'll hear kind of almost a fight break out from people on the West Coast and people on the East Coast. People on the East Coast are like, I had Starlink. It was awful. I returned it. It never worked. People on the West Coast are just like, Starlink is the only thing I ever use. Desert or trees is really what it comes down to.
So we do not default to Starlink. We actually have to take the dish out, put it up on a pole or on a tree somewhere.
It takes about 5 minutes
on the ground.
You can get it set up.
But it's not something we travel with that is always on, always deployed. We only bring it out if cellular is not going to cut it at our location. So we only ended up deploying it at 12 times in our trip. We relied on cellular the rest of the time. However, out of those 12 times, 9 of those locations were the location where Starlink was the only option. That right there, my friends, is priceless.
Yes.
That made Starlink so worth it because we were finally, for the first time in our travels, 18 years on the road, be able to go to places like Alabama Hills, Death Valley, and Big Bend National Park, places where notoriously bad signal, and we were able to enjoy them
and have great, in those sort of places is exactly where Starlink excels. Wonderful, fast, big, wide open sky, and you've got all the internet in the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned we like trees.
Shade is a good thing in a van.
And we were traveling kind of at the tail end of summer when we started our trip. There were 13 locations on our 47 stop trip where there would have been too many trees to even try Starlink. And 3 of those locations where it was our only option, there were too many trees to get a reliable enough connection to do a broadcast like this or do a Zoom call.
You could get some email out on Starlink, but Starlink was painful to even surf the web. It'd be just on, off, drop, gone for 2 minutes, on for 30 seconds, gone for 2 minutes. That's what it's like using Starlink in a thick forest, which is some of our favorite places to take our vans. So
now on the plus side, we took a kind of a survey of each stop we're at. 34 of those locations did not have tree cover and would have worked. So that works out to be about 25% of the locations on this trip where Starlink was not really a viable option for the type of work that we need to do
Right.
online. That is not something that is going. I'm not going out on the road with only Starlink. Is basically what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, yes, and again, it a lot depends on where you're traveling, but even people who are mostly in the desert sometimes like shade and or go places where Starlink is not optimal and stuff. And people on the East Coast where there's so many of the places you want to go have shade or buildings that might be obstructing the sky. Starlink is becomes kind of more of a rare option, a rare thing to need because the cellular is so much better.
Yes.
These two.
All right. Now, on the cellular carriers, here's kind of a synopsis of how each of the carriers worked out for us. You can see they all worked, a good
Sometimes,
percentage
yeah.
of the time. They all didn't work at all at some of the times. And there were times where each of them, maybe not Verizon on this trip, but where they were our only option to get online, including Starlink was not working
Yeah.
there.
People always say, well, which is the best carrier? And we've reached a point in time where AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon are all have very mature networks. They've just matured in very different ways. So T-Mobile is several steps ahead as far as next generation fast 5G. AT&T and Verizon have a bit more legacy coverage. AT&T had the big government contract for what's called FirstNet, where it's the cell network for first responders. So AT&T has done a ton of work putting in coverage in a lot of places you wouldn't necessarily expect for the first responders. But that when you're an AT&T customer and there's not an emergency underway, that just provides coverage for regular AT&T customers. So you'd often be surprised where you'll find really decent AT&T, mostly 4G, but still really good 4G. So there's no one universal network or carrier, but that's why it helps to have at least two, maybe three.
Yes. So absolutely. We see a lot of people going out with just Starlink and like the T-Mobile home internet, and those two combinations can
They work
work
really well together.
great, but there are so many more locations you can go if you have AT&T or Verizon also in your setup. The more redundancy you have, the more tools you have. And of course, if you think about your signal enhancing strategy and making sure you have modern equipment, if you've got an old hotspot or a old hotspot device or a router with older modems, you're missing out on coverage that you could get with each of the carriers as they've expanded their networks.
Yeah, coverage and performance have improved a lot, but it doesn't automatically flow to older hardware. So newer hardware gets much better coverage and speed. The latest 5G gear is so much better than even the early 5G gear.
All right. Now, we just put out a brand new guide on the Mobile Internet Resource Center. We have a video that goes around with it specifically about metal RVs. And this includes vans because most vans are made of metal.
Metal block signal.
Yes, it also applies to Airstreams. It applies to bus conversions.
Yes.
Guess what we have? We have a bus conversion and a van.
We're used to living in a metal box.
We know this well. Basically, metal acts as a shield from a lot of wireless signals. It's really hard for a wireless signal to penetrate the metal of a van. That's why you might step outside your van and get great cell phone signal on your phone. You step inside your van and you're frustrated like this young lady in her van here.
We know people who've climbed up on their ladder and done their work on top of their van just because that's where they get their best signal and work done. Is if you don't want to have to be out on your roof in the rain, this is where you start to compensate.
So your solutions for this is, first of all, if you install an external antenna that's going to an internal cellular device or router, then the signal's being captured by the antenna. It's going down through a wire into this. And then now you're bringing in that great, stronger signal outside to the inside of your van, and you're online and happy. That is what we do. We always keep a dome antenna on top of our van that is always connected, that allows us to get a good cellular signal while we're in motion. If we're just stopped for lunch, if we're just stopped on the side of the road at a rest stop to do a Zoom call, it is ready to go without deploying anything. We also keep an external antenna on the back of our van on a pole that we can raise up that gives us even better signal.
I can get it up 20 feet so that I can get over a lot of obstructions because, cellular really does like line of sight. So just getting sometimes over whatever is around you can make a big difference with a pole, and the pole just falls right down into the ladder of the van.
Yep. All right. Some other options if you don't want to install things on your roof, and that's
this is the cheapest trick we got here.
All right. First one over there is put your devices in the window. If you put it in the window, it's not being blocked by the metal of your van. Now, you do need to be aware if there's
Some
sun.
tinting and stuff.
Yeah, some tinting on windows has metal in it, and that won't do you much good. And also, sun directly on your devices will help heat up the battery inside of your device and give you poor performance. But one of the tricks that we use, we bought this on Amazon. You can probably also get it at Target or Walmart. It's a little suction cup soap caddy that you would get for a bathroom. We just lick this thing,
Stick it in the window.
stick it on the window, and then put our
A
device.
phone or a hotspot right into that. And this difference between this in the window and this just 2 feet away or a foot, 6 inches down, sitting on the desk in the van, which is below the window line, could be the difference between a really great performance and barely usable. And you'd be amazed sometimes just 6 inches or a foot, the difference that can make getting the device up into the window.
And the other option, now we normally don't recommend boosters, cellular boosters, but
We
this
carry
is
one.
we carry one because, well, WeBoost gave it to us. You have an external antenna that goes on your roof, comes down into this little box that then electronically magnifies that antenna, amplifies that antenna, out an interior antenna, and then anything that's within range of that interior antenna is getting the boosted cell signal.
So it's basically like helps you be like as if you had stepped outside, and it can have a decent impact on your upload speeds. But boosters often they'll almost always show more bars, and that's how they advertise. They look, you go from 1 bar to 4 bars. But one thing they don't tell you is that oftentimes, in a lot of locations, the booster, you'll go from 1 bar to 4 bars, but your speeds will go slower with the stronger signal because the booster is kind of taking that outside signal and putting it through a little funnel of just a single antenna and really destroying a lot of what the modem in your phone or your hotspot can negotiate directly with the tower. So you're getting a stronger but louder, noisier signal that can ruin data performance.
But in a van, it is a great option to get the signal
Into the metal
inside,
box.
especially for phone calls on your phone.
Yep.
It's data, it's a little more iffy, but if you're in a van, it ups the consideration for having a cellular booster.
Yep.
Now, another option is if you're just wanting to do phone calls on your phone, and you're not able to get a solid enough signal on your phone, but you are using like a mobile router, like we've shown here, this Peplink or a mobile hotspot device, and it has that external antenna connected, you're getting a good internet connection. You can turn on Wi-Fi calling on your phone.
Most carriers support this now. And so Wi-Fi calling is basically using the Wi-Fi network instead of the cellular network for your voice calls and text messages. So you can even put your phone basically into airplane mode, just turn on Wi-Fi, connect to your router's Wi-Fi network, which has got who knows how it's online, but it's got probably a much better signal than your phone directly. And your phone will still ring. You'll still get your calls. You do all of this, even though you've got really bad signal inside your van because of the metal walls or you're traveled somewhere remote.
So those are some strategies. You'll find all this recapped at our new guide at rvmobileinternet.com/metal. We have a bunch more tips there for our members going
Living
over.
in metal boxes like us.
Some other considerations with vans is, of course, they're smaller, so we have limited roof space. Your roof might be covered with things like an air conditioner, TV antenna, solar. So that doesn't leave you necessarily a lot of space to put on antennas or Starlink on the roof. So unlike a large Class A, where you might have more roof space to play with.
And then speaking of Starlink and vans and small vehicles, power on Starlink is something that a lot of people get really caught off guard by because Starlink uses upwards of 50 watts of power while turned on. It actually, if you're in trees or obstructions, it actually can use even a lot more power than that. Whereas a cellular device like a hotspot is using like somewhere between 5 and 10 watts of power. So a tiny fraction of the amount of power. So Starlink can really, really suck down batteries. And there are ways to modify Starlink to void the warranty and modify it to run directly off DC, but in general, you have to run it off of an inverter, off of AC power. So you've got the extra load and loss of having the inverter on, unless you want to do the modifications.
Void your warranty.
Void your warranty and run directly on DC. But even still, it's still a lot of DC power. So that's a major consideration for Starlink is power usage.
And of course, a smaller interior space as well means you have less space to put gear. And something like that T-Mobile home internet and gateway, it's pretty large, whereas you can tuck this up into a smaller cabinet. It doesn't need a lot of ventilation. It's designed to work in high heat environments. Great device is a great way to get a lot of power and connectivity in one little box.
And then things like a hotspot and stuff, they just fit in your pocket or whatever in your bag. One other thing is about the storing your Starlink. We discovered that the Starlink stores nicely on top of a cat's litter box roof. We're talking about our cat in the beginning, so you got to get creative in a tiny van of where you put all this stuff.
Now, we will be opening this up for Q&A for the rest of our time here with you here at the Van Life Summit. So do get those questions going in the chat room. We'll be happy to field some questions there. But if you would like to go further with our content, we do have a lot of free content available over at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. And we take a member-funded, community-funded approach. All of our content is brought to you by our premium members.
No advertising.
We have no advertising. We are not sponsored. We do not rely on that sort of funding. We get most of our funding from premium membership annual fees. And for that, our members get to go further with our in-depth content, which includes reviews of a lot of the gear that we test, hands-on testing notes, information such as like that case study or that 5-month trip. They got to go in depth with what worked at each location, the locations that we were at, and the struggles that we had at each location. They get interactive guidance. We have forums and we do regular webinars with them. And we also offer private advising sessions with our members that they can purchase extra. So if they want the interactive guidance from our team, we have 8 of us on the team that provide that guidance to go a lot deeper. We can help you figure out your unique needs. We have a whole bunch of guides and educational content. Vendor discounts. So instead of doing affiliate kickbacks, we instead have the vendors pass along bigger discounts that are normally available directly to our members, which can save you more than the cost of membership.
Particularly if you're buying a high-end router, the discount will more than pay for membership. Because we don't want to have a kickback, so it just goes straight to you.
We do have classrooms, so if you like this style of format of learning, we have a 44-lesson video course that we developed that will give you a solid foundation in understanding cellular, Wi-Fi, and satellite so that you can make informed decisions for what you need. And then we do get alerts because we are a trusted source of information. A lot of manufacturers and representatives at the carriers give us insider info when stuff is coming, and they allow us to pass that on to our members in a non-public fashion.
So sometimes we'll set out alerts saying, hey, this really great plan is about to go away. You've got 48 hours if you want to get this plan that will never be available again. Jump on it. So we've gotten members in on grandfathered plans with last minute notice. So it's been good.
Yep. And then we have a newsletter. We do have a free newsletter that you can sign up for that gives kind of a monthly recap of what we've covered. We do news stories when new stuff comes out, so new gear, new plans, we cover it all. We do have a YouTube channel specifically for the Mobile Internet Resource Center. I should have put a link to that on this slide, but you can find that if you want to subscribe and get that free content. But our members get a deeper newsletter with those alerts, with the stories more summarized, so you can quickly skim and see if something applies to you. We are offering a $10 discount for attending this Van Life Summit. Just use Van Life Summit at checkout at rvmobileinternet.com/membership. All right, we can go ahead and take some questions.
I've seen a few slide by. We'll just go to the top and work our way down pretty quickly here. It's the hellos.
So we had I guess this doesn't work like eCam.
Yeah, we can't highlight.
So Ingrid asks, is Starlink the only option for Canadians? It is definitely an easy option. Canada doesn't have great data plans for cellular.
And Canada's huge, and so there's a lot more big areas of dead zone too.
So it is a great option. It's it is a little bit of an investment, but it is far less than getting a robust cellular setup and getting mobile routers and stuff like that. So it is a great option, and it gives you that flexibility to roam into the US if you're playing that in your travels as well. There are other options for Canadians. We don't track them that closely, but we do have a guide for our members for Canadians for both applying our content, for learning about all this gear, and what are the general options in Canada, as well as when you're in the US, what are plans and data services are available to you as a non-citizen, because you don't qualify for postpaid options in the US. Same as we don't qualify for them when we travel to Canada.
But there are some good options to get in the US that you can't get as a Canadian.
Right.
Just gotta know how to get them.
Let's see. Okay, so Brian had asked, do Starlink connections have latency that makes Zoom calls a problem?
That's what's different from Starlink from the old school satellites. So satellite got a bad reputation for latency because the old style geosynchronous satellites are 23,000 miles way up over the equator. So there's about a half-second delay speed of light as the signal goes up to those satellites and back. Starlink is only a few hundred miles up instead of 23,000 miles. So the latency is only 20-30 milliseconds, which is very similar to cellular. So there is not really much concern with latency with Starlink.
But On the mobile plan, which is what they sell for RV and boating, that one gives you what they call best effort service or lower priority service, and they only guarantee that you're going to get a minimum of 2 megabit per second up to like 5 or 10. Which, if you're in an area that's congested, that may not be enough upload to get a reliable high definition Zoom call going. So if you need something that's reliable, like you're presenting like this, we personally will not use Starlink when we're doing a presentation like this.
Not as the only connection. Right. We always combine Starlink and cellular. You can also, with Starlink, you can pay for premium data. It's $2 a gigabyte that you can turn on while you're doing a thing, which will give you a higher priority in the network. So you'll have a little bit of a you will be less subject to congestion. But if you forget to turn that off, we've had people get $1,000 bill because they forgot to turn their priority data off. So you got to be very careful with that.
Right. So Kieran had asked what were the 2 locations where we could not get online. One was at a campground along the Missouri River outside of Columbia, Missouri. It was beautiful location, lots and lots of trees, right along the Katy Trail.
Oak trees shading down. And it was the kind of place that you could get a little bit of Starlink and a little bit of all the carriers and cellular, but we were only getting about 1-2 megabits per second of speed with the cell upload with the cell carriers. And Starlink was lots of dropouts because these big giant oak tree branches spread out everywhere. So that's like, we weren't going to fight it. We just said,
we were not going to risk doing a presentation. It was a van life presentation. So we were not going to risk it for that. So we went to a rest stop nearby and got a solid AT&T connection to do the broadcast from.
So just drive up the road, drive half an hour and do our meeting from there.
The other location where we had to cancel stuff is we had booked at a hot spring outside of Buell, Idaho.
Miracle Hot Springs.
Yes. And it was, Idaho has a lot of volcanic rock, and this campground was down in a little ravine. So this volcanic rock was blocking cell signal. We could not get anything there, even launching our 25-foot pole.
Masked up the
and lots of trees. We just could not get Starlink to connect.
We tried the Starlink at 75 feet in every direction at the end of the cable and stuff, tried everything we could. And eventually we just walked a quarter mile up the road, and that's all it took to get cell signal, and then called in and said, hi, we're not going to cancel our hot tubbing or hot spring soaking to do these meetings today. Let's reschedule.
So thankfully it was with business colleagues on our own team.
Otherwise we would have had to drive away.
Yeah. So they were not critical stuff.
Trees. I like trees.
All right.
Let's see.
So we had Unbound Buckley said, never heard of Peplink today until now, and I'm intrigued. We had someone else say our opinion on Peplink. We've been Peplink fans since they issued their first consumer accessible cellular embedded router back in 2015, the old Max BR1 Classic. That has become the central of our arsenal almost 10 years ago. They are a high-end, their primary market is
like police cruisers and ambulances and
trains,
remote offices, trains, buses, places, things that have enterprise-grade connectivity, but they've been very consumer-friendly, and over the years they've reached out more and more to the mobile RV consumer market, to the point that now they actually schedule a call with us once a month, which is actually just today, where we get to talk to their product managers about the needs of our market, and then they listen to us.
We have partnered with a Mobile Must Have, which they're full-time RVers, and he had a background in Peplink gear and had channels for selling it. So he sells the gear, but we have co-developed a whole resource center of Peplink content.
Tutorials and advanced guides and
we
stuff.
do monthly webinars for our members on Peplink topics to help you configure it, because most of the stuff you get from Peplink is geared towards IT managers. So we're focused on helping
normal people take advantage of some of this advanced gear, because when you start combining connections and trying to use multiple connections at once, that's called bonding, where it's you're actually intertwining Starlink and cellular, and that requires a server on the internet, and it requires kind of some technologies is happening to make those two connections work as one. It's not that hard to configure, but it does require some understanding, because it actually has some trade-offs. There's certain things that don't work well when you're bonded, but other things, like a video presentation like this, it makes you immune to, well, never immune, but mostly immune to random dropouts. So your connection becomes so much more reliable.
Yeah. So Peplinks are great. They've become very popular in the RVing and boating community for consumers, because they bridge that gap of being professional, high-end gear. Their pricing is a little more expensive than you might get for consumer price stuff,
But it's
but it's still accessible, and they are reaching out to make their stuff more and more user friendly.
yeah,
And we really like they've listened to the community,
and they've got some stuff that's actually pretty affordable. I mean,
Mhm.
things like the BR2 we have is very expensive,
Yes,
but
but
they have a lot of stuff that
they
is much
just
more affordable.
came out with the B1 router, which is $299. It doesn't have cellular inside of it, but it has lots of Ethernet ports and USB tethering and Wi-Fi as WAN, so you can use it to bridge
combine
in
Starlink and T-Mobile and your
and
phone
hotspots
and a
and-
hotspot. So yeah, the B1, $299, a lot of capability. That's
Mhm.
brand new.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We had Jay Stevens says he's a member. Thank you so much. So worth it. You guys rock. We
Thank
love
you.
hearing that.
Yes.
We love our members. They make this all possible. There's
Everything
no
we
way
do
we
is
could-
word of mouth. We don't
Yes.
advertise
Yep.
and we don't take advertising.
Yep.
So
Brittany asks, is there a device or option to get access to multiple carriers in one spot like Mint Mobile? So Mint Mobile is T-Mobile. It's not multiple carriers, but there are companies like TravelFi and HomeFi that basically have what's called SIM farms. So they have multiple carriers and they use virtual SIM technology so that you can change which carrier you get access to in the device. The downside with them is most of their routers are very low end. Our partners at Mobile Must Have, some of the newer Peplink devices, the higher end ones, they have virtual SIM built into them, and they are able to now offer. They just started rolling out plans that give you access to virtual stuff on your high end Peplink.
Yeah.
It's still rolling out, still in beta, but there are becoming more and more options for that.
And then the classic way to do it is have devices that support multiple SIMs. So like the Peplink router we have right there, it's got 4 SIM slots. You can put 4 plans into it.
SIM slots over there.
The SIM slots are right over there. So yeah, you could put 4 SIM cards, so you could cover all 4 carriers in there, and it's got 2 modems, so 2 SIMs can be connected at one time, and then just via the dashboard you could change which 2 you're using. So you can get a lot of redundancy with plans, and there are some pretty affordable plans out there too. So
okay. JG says, overall, what is the best small option for value, would you say? So there's a lot of options for small. I would really have to go and to research what options are out there. Yeah, leave that up. That's fine.
okay, yeah.
There's a lot. I would check our data plan guides. I would kind of start there, and then also look at what your, what devices you want. That new B1 router is a great option if you want to bring in multiple hotspots and routers and stuff like that. So a lot of options for value and also for reliability.
And it's also one option for value, kind of an ultimate value tip that we give people is just use a cellular connected tablet.
Yes.
So this is you can get unlimited data plans for tablets for about just $20, $10 to $20 a month even. That gives you unlimited data on a tablet if you've got a cellular enabled tablet, and you can do a whole lot. You can do Zoom calls, you can do all sorts of things like that. You can hook up a keyboard, you can hook the tablet into a bigger screen television. You can do a whole lot just with a tablet and take advantage of those really, really affordable plans.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can use a tablet in your setup, just remember, if you're in a van, you can't get an external.
There's no external antenna option
so.
for the tablet, so you're definitely going to have signal challenges sometimes.
Yes. All right. Let's see, exploring. Camila says, have you ever tested European equipment? And we are US based at present time. So all of our experience with US based and FCC certified equipment.
Yeah, but Peplink is, they are a worldwide company. And actually on our conference calls, we often are talking to people in their European office and stuff like that. So we don't track the European stuff, but we do know a lot. The companies do.
Gary Nichols says we told him about the Verizon prepaid unlimited option in 2013. That would not be accurate. The prepaid Jetpack option came out in 2018 and was around for about 8 months before it expired in 2019. 2013 would have been the Verizon postpaid unlimited plan. That was around since 2011, and they quit allowing transfers in 2016 on that one.
These are like old grandfathered in Verizon plans that now that still the network has improved. So these old plans we had from a decade ago now get incredibly fast 5G and are truly unlimited in a hotspot. So yay.
Okay. Robert asked, will the upcoming Starlink cellular be less sensitive to tree cover and have good data plans? So what you're talking about there is the new T-Mobile Starlink partnership. And what basically Starlink's going to be doing is essentially attaching cellular towers for T-Mobile to their satellites.
It's a piggyback payload.
Right. So in a cell, which will be several hundred miles, they will be able to deliver about 7 megabit per second capacity for that entire cell. 7 megabit per second is great for one person. For going against hundreds of thousands of people, this is going to be available really just for text messaging and emergency services.
And it will, particularly the very first version of it, because they're just doing it on the current small Starlink satellites. They don't have space for a very big piggyback payload onto it. It's not going to have any sort of penetration through trees or indoors and buildings and stuff. It's going to be very limited. Future versions of satellite integrated cell technology will be able to penetrate more into buildings. And actually, AT&T is working with a company called AST SpaceMobile to do something similar that has a huge antenna that is on a satellite. And there's others. We actually just published a big kind of state of the art look at the state of satellite internet options. We did a whole big section about these satellite to cellular technologies from Starlink, from SpaceMobile, from Link, and there's several others. So check the guide at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. It's just a couple, like last week.
I think it was on the 13th. We put out this, and it's also available as a video format if that is your preference. A question about security cameras. We do not track devices. We track it. We use them, but we track internet plans, access to internet, not what you can do online. Victor wants to know, is HughesNet an option? HughesNet is the old school geostationary
We used to have
satellite.
a big HughesNet dish we carried with us.
At present time, all of their plans require a 2-year contract. That's kind of not consumer friendly. And they also require that a professional installer come out and install and aim because you're aiming to a specific satellite. There were some companies that got around that back in the day before Starlink.
That had robotically aimed dishes that you can that were very expensive, but that auto aimed. And then there was actually a few companies that back when we were using that, you get a surveyor's tripod and spend about a 45-minute process every time you stopped aiming the satellite. And that's what we used to do when we traveled with HughesNet. That's not really an option anymore. So there's no current good HughesNet options, but they've just read the guide and the video we just put out. HughesNet does have a new satellite. It is still geosynchronous, so it still requires professional aiming, but they have plans to do more in the future. So in the next few years ahead, they might have some interesting stuff. Future satellite stuff. Also, Amazon is building their own Starlink competitor. It's called Project Kuiper. So Amazon, in the next 18 months or so, will be launching something interesting. So there's a lot of cool new satellite stuff happening. So check the guide we just put out, the big article we put out, and kind of you can see the state of all the different players.
Right. So there's been a lot of talk about Peplink, a lot of about Starlink. There definitely are two top options that our members gravitate towards, but there's also a lot of other gear out there. We're also fans of InstaConnect. So one of the issues you get is when you have a router or a hotspot device, and then you have an antenna on the roof, you get a signal loss over that cable. So the longer your cable, the less of a benefit you're getting of that signal enhancing. So what InstaConnect does is they are putting the modem and the antenna right together, and they have options. They have an option for that. It's like $700. We currently have that in testing. So that's another option that you can consider. There's InvisiGig, GLINet, has some great entry-level routers as well. And we have hands-on experience with all of these for our members to have access to, and they can compare with
other companies like Wi-Fi Ranger and MoFi. And we in our gear guide, because we're not beholden to any particular company, we have absolutely every piece of gear and everything we know about it documented over at the Mobile Internet Resource Center.
And I will say the majority of our members, they tend to, after reading all of our unbiased content, Peplink offers a lot of value and a lot of features. You can see Andrew's in the chat room, and he's kind of looks like a Peplink sales guy with all the features that are out there, and they're all valid. It just has a lot of features and solidly polished because they have to be serving critical needs,
and also because they listen to us and take our feedback, so it's a good thing. Andrew did point out that Peplink also supports a feature called a Wi-Fi as WAN. That's using an upstream campground or coffee shop or some other Wi-Fi network as an upstream connection, and also potentially combining that with your other connections. So that is another really powerful feature that some mobile routers support, and a lot of consumer routers don't do that. But that's a feature that we consider very valuable in mobile routers, is being able to bring that outside Wi-Fi signal from a campground or wherever you're getting it further away, and then rebroadcast or share that with you inside, and potentially combining it with cellular for redundancy or something.
All right. Yeah. So I'm not seeing any other questions. Do you have other questions? We do have a couple more minutes until this session is officially completed. AFK Travel says
He's pointing out the Samsung Dex, which is the feature that Samsung has that basically lets it work kind of like a tablet, where you can put a keyboard and mouse and monitor up to some Samsung phones. Only certain phones support it, and use a phone like a little mini laptop with another monitor. And again, you're using your phone's unlimited data plan, and so you're not having to have a separate type of thing. So yeah.
That's great. iPhones also have an HDMI AV adapter that allows you to screencast. It's a great way to use your Plains Unlimited plan for video streaming and getting a larger screen going that way. So there's a lot of ways to use your phone's unlimited data plans.
So Brenda asks, what about Belkin? Belkin makes just generic consumer routers. I don't think they have anything that is particularly mobile optimized at all.
They don't have cellular. They don't do Wi-Fi as WAN. So we define a mobile router as something that can combine multiple internet sources together. That it can run preferably off 12 volt or AC or 24 volt. That it can have exterior antennas mounted to it for better signal. And usually has some sort of embedded modem into it, but that's, even the Peplink B1 doesn't.
Yeah,
so
right. So yeah, Belkin is if you broaden it out to just generic consumer routers, there's hundreds of them out there.
But we don't track those. We are tracked
users.
on mobile, the things that are optimized and really usable in a mobile environment. So, but yeah, we do have a guide to routers, rvmobileinternet.com/routers, that goes really deep into selecting routers and the sorts of options that are out there for them. So what you'll find with a lot of our content is there's a free section to it that you are welcome to utilize. And then if you find yourself wanting the content in the member section, then do consider becoming a member. You'll get to go a lot deeper with our content, get that interactive guidance, and the discounts if you choose some of the equipment that our vendors offer on.
We try to create our site as a community resource. So we try to give away a ton of information in the free areas of the site. We're not trying to just tease people with a little bit of info and then, you got to join. It's like, no, a lot of people, they only need the basics. And
we've had some people join after saying, hey, look, I was able to use all of your free content to get to find my solution. I'm joining to support you so that you can keep doing this.
Cool. We love that. Thank
you. We much prefer that. And Daniel, thank you for joining. Daniel helps us keep the site going.
Yes.
He actually our coverage app. So many years ago, long before we started the Mobile Internet Resource Center, which was 10 years ago.
Yeah, so this is like 12 years now in the App Store. Yeah,
2010.
We wrote this at one of the early iOS dev camps, and we came up with an idea for an app with something that would solve a pain problem that we had.
Yeah, we were at a campground in Colorado. We had prepaid for it. We thought we had great
cell signal,
up
field of wildflowers, boondocking in the middle of nowhere.
And then after 4 hours, we got messages from our carriers that we were roaming, but nothing on our phone told us we were roaming. So we said, well, wouldn't it be great to have something on our phone that let us know if we were in a roaming area? So we created an app. Basically, it takes the carrier's coverage maps, and we are officially partnered with Ookla, who creates the speed test app. So they provide our maps to us, which are based on the carriers.
Yeah, we used to have to make them ourselves, which is a lot of work.
But you can create your own personal coverage map. So this is showing 5G coverage for Verizon and AT&T. If you have T-Mobile, you can turn on T-Mobile.
Yeah. So the whole idea, we wrote this actually in the 3G era, and then 4G came along, and you could see like what type of coverage. So I'm like, I only want to see 5G coverage, which is going to be of a certain speed, of certain potential technology. And the maps are on your device, they're on your phone, so you don't have to be in a good signal area to be able to look things up. So it's been a really useful tool of an app. I can't believe we've kept it going for 12 years with all the constant updates and stuff.
And we do also have the Canadian maps as well. So you can see how little of Canada.
A decent amount, but
the populated areas are covered, but that's the areas where Canada is covered. So it's a great app. So often now the cell carriers have really fleshed out their maps, and there's other resources out there for finding but we do use it in our travels to say, hey, well, this next place we're planning to go, what are the odds that we're going to be able to?
They claim there's 5G here and stuff like that. So. And US Public Lands is another similar app we wrote. So we used to do some app development, and we've kept all our apps going. Mm-hmm. They were all made for us, us nomads.
G. Bryce, will an eSIM plan for the US provide sufficient cell data? I'm not sure. There are currently no. eSIM plans usually are applying to smartphones.
Yeah, there are ways to do eSIM plans. Actually, some of the Peplink hardware supports eSIM plans. the eSIM plan, most of the eSIM plan providers, unless they're the carrier themselves, are just basically getting bulk wholesale deal things. So again, a lot of data devices don't really support eSIM, and physical SIMs are more flexible. But if you've got particular needs or questions, that eSIM is still kind of a niche case.
Yep. Cherry just came in and said, I came in late. A lot of information as a beginner going on the road. Where should I start? So I would recommend going over to that link that's right there, rvmobileinternet.com. That is our website. We
have some
track all this.
started guides.
There's a getting started guide, and we also have one specifically for working remotely. And if you want interactive guidance, discounts, and go deeper with our content, we do offer our membership, and there's a $10 discount code available using Van Life Summit that you could use today to join if you want to go further with our content. Thank you for putting that up there.
Yeah. The magic fairy behind the scenes.
Thank you. So there's the discount code if you would like to join the membership and go further with our content. We have a lot of working remote workers who join so that we can help them find their right solution.
Because everybody's needs are different, whether you're doing broadcasts like this, or if you're more of a kind of an offline batch worker, your needs are very, very different, because upload is a lot harder, and broadcast and live in real time is a lot harder than a lot of other people's needs, which they just need to sync their email or maybe upload their work at the end of the week even. And so completely different style.
So I think the most critical component of designing your mobile internet setup and what's going to work for you is understanding your needs. Is how long are you going to stay in each location? How remote are you going? How many trees are you going to be camping under? What do you need to do online? If you just need to check email, respond to emails, great. That's a much different scenario than someone who needs to do Zoom calls all the time and broadcasts.
And we do
large
people,
file uploads.
We often talk people out of spending money, because a lot of people try to think they need to copy somebody that they saw online. Some influencer did a video about their ultimate setup, and they want to spend money to buy exactly what that person had. And you determine their needs really aren't the same or aren't that, and they can get by with a lot less. And we since we're not tied to affiliate money, we talk people out of spending money all the time.
We have a question from Steven. It says, the Peplink BR1 router support bonding Wi-Fi and hotspots? So the current BR1 Pro 5G router has a built-in 5G modem, so you can put one data plan on that you're going to use. You can connect to Wi-Fi as WAN, as well as one of your internet inputs.
And you can also use an Ethernet port to bring in a hotspot or Starlink as another connection too.
But you would have to be a mobile hotspot device that's Ethernet out. There are a lot of hotspot devices out there that don't. They use USB, and unfortunately, the BR1 does not have a USB port. So you need to select your hotspots.
The B1 though does, and so does the BR2 Pro. So you got to pick ones that have USB ports if you want to do USB tethering.
Yeah. So if you're considering Peplink gear, we have a whole built-out Peplink resource center, rvmobileinternet.com/Peplink-resources, or Peplink as well. We'll take you to it. But we have a full product overview. We focus in on the popular options that our audience tends to gravitate towards. And we have a lot of information, a lot of hands-on time to share with the different styles. We have videos on how to select the right Peplink for you, and as well as a whole bunch of configuration advice for our members going into bonding and using Wi-Fi as WAN, in control, and all these other advanced features.
And Andrew asks, is there any trade-ins for Peplink? I think they had some trade-in promotions last fall, but there's no currently any that I know. But the devices keep resale value, so they're actually not hard to sell if you've got an older one and you want to upgrade.
We have our members. We have a buy-sell forum for our members. We're constantly seeing our
Or
members.
there's the feature called Synergy Mode they rolled out last year that lets you take your old Peplink and your new one and basically combine them together for more capability. So the modems of your old one can become extra modems on the new one. So that's actually very powerful. So we're out of time, so just go look up Synergy Mode. We got a whole guide on our site. Super powerful way to combine two routers when you upgrade.
All right. I think we are reaching the end of our hour. Thank you so much to the Van Life Summit for inviting us to be part of this. Thank you for joining in. We hope this content has been useful for you. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mobile Internet Resource Center. If you'd like to keep up with our video content, we have news stories. We have a free newsletter. And of course, if you want to come and join, you use the Van Life Summit discount code to save $10 off a new MIA Plus membership. That gets you access to our video course that you can take, as well as all of our in-depth content. If you want to track our personal journeys, what our cat is up to, that's technomadia.com.
Yep,
Uh,
we just wrapped up the van trip, so there's some nice videos and
mhm.
blog posts about the van trip, and we're about to be setting off on cruising season, so we'll be
Yep.
cruising up the East Coast in our boat.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a rest of a great summit. I feel there's some great topics coming up tomorrow. See y'all later.
Take care.